on Facebook. This is Alan Abrone. Another episode of ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast, where we're all about community impact over profit. We're all about building up the community. And we try to put at least I try to put an emphasis on the minority community. But that is not to say that this podcast is all anti-government, anti-USA, anti-police, anti-white, anti-anything. Let me back up. If it's anti-anything, it's anti-bigotry, it's anti-propaganda, putting out things that are based on propaganda, that are based on things that are not contextualized or not in full context. And so we're all about building up the community. And if this podcast does anything, it's the hope is that it builds up self-esteem. It brings awareness to the need for context, the need for unity and togetherness, most of all first in Jesus Christ. But if we're going to say that we are a nation, we must be a united nation, not a divided nation, but a united nation. So if you have the opportunity, I want you to go over to my YouTube channel, ARA Self-Empowerment. You'll see the African Unity flag. A desire for you to like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Come over to Facebook, ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast on Facebook. I want you to follow us here, build up our followers and our subscribers here on Facebook. When you see the African Unity flag, again, this is not anti-white. This is not anti the United States of America. Down with whitey or down with the government and all of that. That's not the purpose of this podcast. This podcast is to bring awareness, to bring revelation. Too often, far too often rather, people are putting out information that is not accurate, that is not context, especially when you listen to the Republican Party and when you listen to the Democratic Party, to be fair about it, both sides of it. When you listen to the various things that you hear people talking about in society, it just makes you feel a sense of awe. I cannot believe that people are actually graduating from high school, graduating from college, or leading businesses and working in the government bureaucracy in various areas, and are so ignorant, meaning unlearned, or just spreading things that are not true. And so before we get into today's hot topic, a juicy hot topic, and I will try my best to not basically repeat myself on some of the other podcasts, and try to find something new that we need to talk about that people need to hear. And before we get on to the hot topic, let's put this out there. We don't want to make this all about white versus black, because it's not about white versus black. Now, in some areas it is, but overall it's not about black versus white. We don't want to throw everybody under the bus. To think about all of those in various races who have served in our military, served even now in the military, in our police departments and sheriff departments, or in legislative offices, that were white and did great things and still are doing great things to help all people, regardless of color. So we don't want to make this like, hey, let's throw everyone under the bus. And everybody is a racist. Everybody is a bigot. That's not true. And that's the unique thing about bigotry and racism and profiling and things like that. It's so mixed up with various people. It makes it hard to identify. Because once you start trying to group people, that's exactly what most bigots and racists and people who subscribe to some of the things that we're going to talk about, they love that because they get to hide. When you say, oh, all of the police, the bigots on the police or the posers on the police department love that because they get to hide within the police department while you throwing rocks, hitting everybody, even the good ones. That's why we have to be very, not only proactive, but we have to be meticulous and wise when we are discussing things that we're going to discuss today. Okay? And so the topic today is life as a black man. Let's talk about it, especially life as a black man within the United States of America. I did some podcasts before that somewhat follow the lines of this, but this is a little different. So the difference is life as a black man, and why is it more times than not that a black man is viewed as a con artist, up to something, can't be trusted, a clown, leading a circus. I hear that a lot about Deion Sanders. Why is that? Why is it that when a black man is trying to do anything in America that goes down the line of leadership is more times than not trusted? He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to go wrong. He's going to mess it up. And I desire to say this. This thing is so messed up and wrapped up that people that are black will have these views. And that is what makes it so unique. And that is why so many whites in America, or European Americans, or however they desire to categorize themselves, they are always pointing to black on black crime or how blacks mistreat one another. And we want to talk about that, like black on black crime, how blacks treat one another, how blacks mistrust one another. Okay, now let's start this way. How does it feel to live in America as a black man? The first thing you have to understand is, what is a black man? I did my DNA. I'm 86% African. It's 86, 14% European. So the first thing that life as a black man in America is that you have to subscribe to a label of black without really knowing your DNA. Most blacks in America are mixed. That means that somewhere down the road, maybe your aunts or cousins or mother or great, down the road was raped. If not raped, maybe it was consensual. I'm not for sure. I'm not God. I can't, go back in time and just see everything, obviously. And so that's what we have to start with first. We have to start with this definition of race, of black and white. And so that is something that was defined years ago to basically give people a feeling of supremacy or superiority. It doesn't matter if the people today did it or the people in the past did it. We can go back and forth of who started it. It's sort of like with Candace Owens. Candace Owens tries to come up with this thing about how white people didn't invent slavery. Well, black people didn't invent prisons, and neither did they invent crime. Black people didn't invent a certain race-on-race crime, but it doesn't stop you from talking about it. Isn't that amazing? How when you're living in America as a black man, you have to always deal with the goalposts being moved. That's the first thing. That within itself is psychological, because every time as a black man you address what other people are doing, they move the goalposts. Don't worry about them, just worry about yourself. Quit having a victim mindset. Okay. But then when they do that, they say stay on topic. Stay with what we're talking about. We're not talking about other stuff. We're talking about how white people are being mistreated today. How white people are feeling more and more mistreated, left out. So whenever they address their mental issues or feeling of disenfranchisement or whatever, they want you to talk about what they are talking about. Don't you bring no other examples. Don't bring up the past. Stay where we are. Kind of somewhat like someone going into cognitive behavioral therapy. How was your day today? And then you say, well, can we talk? You start talking about something that maybe happened in your youth, and someone says to you, let's not focus on that. Let's talk about today. And there you go. Okay. But then when they start talking and you ask them how was their day, they want to go back talking about the past, Chicago, moving the goalposts. You know, they take 14% of the population of the United States of America and say 14% of the population should not lead in crime. And you say, what you mean? How is 14% leading in crime? And they say per 1,000, per 100,000. So based on the numbers per, if you're talking about money or income per capita, or if you're talking about actual events based on the numbers, they look at that percentage. But then when you take that same logic and percentage and apply it to small towns that have meth and stealing and rape and pedophilia, all of a sudden, no, they changed they moved the goalposts. Let's not go by per capita. Let's not go by per 100,000. Let's not go by that now. You can't. That's not fair. It's always moving the goalpost. The whole thing is all about supremacy, trying to look better than somebody. And this is not to say that all white people are engaging in this. And so what you have to understand is that's the life of being a black man in America. Just dealing with the psychology of that, the stigma that you are up to something. You are part of the problem. I hear people saying this all the time, some of the most ignorant things I've heard in my life. And they actually think that they know what they're talking about. If a black man and a white man get into a conversation, it's already assumed that the black man is ignorant. The black man has a GED. And here this guy probably dropped out in the 8th grade, and because he's white and he says something, it's true. And he will move the goalposts. If you have a college degree and you have the 8th grade education, here, watch this. Having an education don't mean nothing. It don't mean nothing when they don't have one. It only means something when they have it. And no matter how you deal with them, it's always moving the goalposts. And you say, who are them? Them are those who subscribe to the Confederate Constitution when they seceded, that the natural order of the black man is beneath the white man. And anything that has black in it, if it's 1% of 2%, is black. That within itself claims that white people are pure. See, you don't have to make a law. People say, what law is on the book? You don't have to have a law on the book when something is understood between people. What's understood need not be stated. And I put on here on the title, why are black men often viewed as con artists? Not to be trusted, up to something. I've said this before. When you brainwash a people with propaganda, it does not matter what race is doing it. In America, the Confederacy, and what I mean by the Confederacy, this is not everybody that was in the Confederate Army or that was in the South thought this way. Many of them were brainwashed themselves that they were doing a just and noble cause. There were a lot, I admit, there were a lot of whites that were in the South that didn't own slaves. But it doesn't matter if you own them or not. If you still furthering the cause, you're still a part of it. Let me explain something to the moving of the goalposts, the double bind communication. Today in 2023, going into 2024, if the police pull you over in a car full of stolen goods, or a car smelling like marijuana, or in a stolen car, they're not saying that you are not guilty. Well, we're just gonna get him or her. They're gonna get all of it, especially if you're black. You see what I'm talking about? But some odd reason, when it's them, is, well, no, you can't put them all together. No matter how many mass shootings that takes place in America with white men, it's always the lone wolf. It's always the lone wolf, because it's the whole mindset about the psychology that white men appear. No matter how many pedophiles, because white men lead in pedophilia. Let me break this down to you. This is a unique situation that America refuses to look at or just look over. I like to call it the horse on the table. Just think about it. This is life as a black man. Did you not know over half of all black women in America were raped, molested, and during the time of slavery? And people say, well, man, that was way back in 1865, 1860, whatever. Okay, we go with that. The thing about that is what people won't desire to talk about, is that where did those people go? I mean, let's just talk about that. Here are all these women being raped, molested, children being molested, and most of these, I want to call them predators, were white men. Now, who counseled those women? In that time, who gave them counsel? Nobody counseled those women. They just sent them on their way. And they went on to produce children, traumatized children or women, leading and furthering more trauma. So we never talk about the trauma in the black community that was inflicted by whites, who now have spread this trauma throughout their families. So what I see today is in the black community, what we have is a bunch of traumatized people that not only were traumatized during slavery, but traumatized for almost 100 years after slavery, all the way up until 1970 and even to 2023. It has nothing to do with being superiority or none of that. As a black man, most racists and bigots who pretend and say they're not are always trying to have the upper hand. That's why they don't want a black man with a gun. It would revolutionize America if all of a sudden they said everybody could own a gun, unless they have proven or have a conviction of murder or a violent crime, an actual violent crime, a conviction. Could you imagine every black man having a gun? This is not to just to be mean or nothing. Most white men in America, and that's any man, are bold and very, what's to say, very courageous when they have the numbers and when they have a weapon. That's any man. Because it's one thing about God. God didn't make a man superior than a man. Technology and numbers did that. I don't care what color you are, what race you are. I don't care what SWAT team, police department, or what. You can have everything on you. But if you give your opponent the same thing, it's mano a mano now. So most of the things that we see in America about superiority is all about numbers and technology. Black people just happen to not have the numbers. And They don't most of the time have the technology, which is what happened in Africa and what happened in North America. It's all about lacking the technology. And not to mention throw in diseases, millions dying with smallpox and flus and the flu and colds, common cold, wiping out millions of people. They were not used to the common cold. And so when we discuss these things about what it feels like to be a black man, it's really tough to be black in America, because not only are you dealing with the stigma of being black and the history of it, more times than not, black men in America are not allowed to seek treatment. They're not allowed to be counseled. In fact, it's just that you're making excuses. You're making that up. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And many times you don't have boots. You don't own boots. So what are you pulling up? Bare skin? And many times, I've said this before, what we talk about with violence and what we call race on race or black on black crime. I recall a young kid taking their head and beating it on the ground. It's amazing how many times people ignore stuff like that. Children are very vulnerable at an early age, and they can't really articulate themselves or what is going on. And I could be wrong. That child could have been abused or messed with or whatever, or desiring trying to talk. Obviously, the child can't talk or can't say what it wants to say, so it's just out of reaction, it beats his head in the ground. A lot of black men are so frustrated with how they're being mistreated or portrayed, instead of getting upset or taking it out on the people that are doing it, they take it out on each other. Now we know this. Let me break it down. They did a study a while back, and I can't remember what year this was. It was talking about sports and how so often when the football, the man's favorite team loses, he comes home and then he's beating up his wife or something because he's mad at the team. He doesn't go find the team. He comes home and he gets in a fight with his wife. Think about that. This is what happens in America with black people. They know they don't have the power to overthrow white people because you're outnumbered. So you pretty much take it out on each other. And then you have those like Candace Owens and Officer Tatum who know that they don't have the power to address the power. So they tend to join the power and basically say it's white people, blacks, that are just making up excuses. If you would just get out there and get a job and work. There is some truth to that. There is some truth that if you get out and you work hard, you can succeed. But that's not everybody. That's not everybody. And to show you that there's some truth to this, white men today are feeling enraged and angry for not having based the rights of things that are not near what black men are having taken from them. And they're marching all the way up to the Capitol. They're arming themselves with guns and things like that. See the difference? You don't see black men lining up, getting arms and guns, saying, I'm tired of this. Because they know it's basically meaningless or effortless or whatever. It's an effortless attempt to overthrow because you don't have the numbers. White men know they have the numbers. And they try to maintain those numbers. They have did a good job on brainwashing black people. As I've said before, life as a black man is understanding that most black men don't know who they are because you haven't done a DNA test. You don't know your true history. And if you follow your true history, it's full of trauma. Most people have PTSD before they went into the military or anything. They have PTSD just from being black in America. And oftentimes when a black man tries to start a business, engage in business, he's going to be viewed as trying to do it for some criminal reason. Not that he desires to have a business and want to have the American dream. He's up to something. He's up to something. Don't trust him. I have heard black people say a nigga can't do nothing right. Nigga always bootleg. Attitude is a reflection of leadership. And I want you to know this. Most black people are not black. And that's the sad thing in America, that most black people are not black. Most black people that walk around in the United States of America are Confederate white. They don't know it. You know, it reminded me of Chappelle, Dave Chappelle, I think that's his name. And they were talking about the blind black guy who they had raised to think that he was white. And he would say all these things about black people. And one day they snatched the hood off of him and they found out that he was black. He still thought he was white, but he was black. Let me tell you something. You know, I would never forget when I first went off to college. And here I was going off to college, a young man. I graduated high school 17. I think I was 18. And I was in a little town of Marshall. I never understood targeting and profiling, but I received a real lesson in Marshall, Texas. I was targeted by the Marshall police. Just every time they saw me driving, they would. And I had never been in trouble, graduated from a Christian private school, but my color just stung out to them. Whether I was dark, black, or brown, which I'm brown, it was the fact that you are not technically pure white. It doesn't matter if you are white coming from a trailer park. The difference is that a white man coming from a trailer park can go and take a shower and get a haircut, put on a suit, and instantly walk down the street, and there is nothing assumed about him. But if it is, it's mostly assumed that he's a lawyer, a doctor, or somebody successful. No matter what you do as a black man, you can walk in with a suit. Unless they actually recognize you as Michael Jordan, which there are not a lot of Michael Jordans, you're automatically assumed to be up to something. And you think about that. You're automatically assumed to be up to something. Now, most of this thing will always, what I'm saying today, will always come back with a counter argument. That's not true. And let me tell you something. Most of the people will be like in the movie Django. You know, you think about Django, that movie is so real. That was one of the most realest movies that I've ever seen. When Django rode in on that horse, the first person that saw him as a threat was a black man. It was Stephen, the character, Samuel Jackson, his character Stephen. Stephen was an extension of Calvin. See, Stephen was Calvin and Calvin was Stephen. They were the same. And he said, who this uppity nigga on this horse? Well, he said a nag. And Calvin goes on to say, oh, who? That's an uppity nigga like yourself. See, notice key words, uppity. Like when you talk about a black man in America, I desire to talk about uppity. The word uppity. What does that mean? If a white man was to walk in the room and make commanding statements of saying, put this up, do that, move that, don't do that, is deemed as leadership. Black man does the same thing, just an uppity nigga. Arrogant. all about himself. See, the terms change. A white man articulates himself of how he feels and what's going on, and it's him commanding the scene. He's speaking up, articulating himself. The black man does the same thing, gift the gab. Conning. He's a con artist. See, the black man is more times than not going to be viewed as a con artist. Why? You can go and have a business conversation. If it doesn't go right in the favor of the white guy or the white woman, some kind of way you con them, you trick them, you deceive them. Yet they can open up all type of payday loan shops, charge you 5 and 6 times the amount of things, title loans, open up companies selling TVs that's worth $300 for $3,000. And none of that is conning somebody, or none of that is taking advantage. Wow. Do you not see that this goes all the way back to slavery? Nothing has changed here in America. This is not to say all white people, because I don't want to be unfair to those who really have worked hard to help black people, who died, put their life on the line helping black people, that have established HBCUs for black people, that are really praying for black people. So let's not throw everyone under the bus, but we must address the horse on the table. And the horse on the table is, why is this so? You walk into a restaurant with a black woman, and the first thing they do, when I say they, those who subscribe to such views, is that they look at the black woman. That's basically saying that you are under a woman. You're less than a woman. You're not even a man. That's what the whole psychology behind saying boy. Say, hey boy. That's to say you are not a man. You're not on my level, boy. They said it to the women too. Girl, it's psychology. It's to get in your head. This is still happening today. Listen to the things when you hear about Deion Sanders. They say things like clown, a circus act, a circus. You don't hear that about white men when they lead football teams and basketball teams. They say, oh, he's preaching. But yet when Dan Lanning from Oregon got up and gave this long, fiery message or preaching or sermon, we could say that was a sermon. They said, wow, he commanded the scene. Powerful. Did you hear that? If Nick Saban preaches, it's not preaching, it's a message. And when you look at Georgia and Alabama, what makes Georgia and Alabama sets them apart? Having all those black 5-star athletes. It's not the fact that you're such this great coach. You're a great coach because you have the best athletes, you have all the black players. So you have all the black people minded. If you desire to be under a good coach. Now notice, they never say you're not a man. They just say you're not a whole man. You're not a grown man. This is why you hear things like code like this. We're not saying Deion Sanders can't coach at some level. He could possibly help with the DBs. In other words, he could be an apprentice or something. He's just not able to lead the whole team. They don't have a problem with a black man being a police. Just you can stand at the light, you can wave the traffic through, you can assist the other officers as if it's a dangerous situation. You go in and make sure everything okay, like a test monkey. It's fine. But you can't be the chief now, the police now. You can't lead it all. Because that's the same ideology, is that the natural order of the black man is under the white man. Patrick Cleburne. They named the city after Patrick Cleburne, a Confederate general. His whole thing was, hey man, let's free the slaves before the North. And they championing him as wanting to do what's right. No, what he basically was saying, let's make them loyal to us first. But at the same time, we don't have to give them equal rights. We can always keep them right above us. Instead of working them for free, we're working for $1. We're working for a sandwich. The same thing. Instead of actually saying you're a slave, we just say you're a criminal. Okay, criminal, slave, same thing. Okay, no more slaves? Okay, we just say they all criminals. And it don't matter what you do in America, some kind of way, they're going to find a way to make you a criminal. In other words, to make you a slave. Therefore, we don't have to give you a job. There was an old saying, if you're not working, you're stealing. If you're not working, you're stealing. That's an old saying. And so the thing in America is to keep black men from working. Keep you out of a job. And so when you try to create your own job, they'll try to get into that too. They're going to stop that. They're going to stop you from creating your own business. Because they know if you have your own business, then you don't need them for a job. So they said we better stop that too. See, white people in America, and this is not all white people. Well, we're talking about those who subscribe to the natural order of the black man is under the white man. So these words of con, gift of gab, fraud, up to something, is all based on that same ideology. That they cannot be on our level. So anything you do is something wrong. And anything we do is not wrong. When they break the law, commit perjury, lie on the witness stand, file false affidavits of saying somebody did something when you know you lied, which is a crime of itself, it's always, I don't remember fully. When I said that, I must have been mistaken. It's always moving the goalposts. Even when caught in a crime, some kind of way they move it around. And so when we see black men, I'm almost for sure this is not to say all black men are just walking around with Jesus. It is to say, to look at the life of a black man in the United States, it is a life of fighting for survival. It is a life of having to deal with mental cruelty. It is a life of trying to deal with trauma on every hand. And that within itself is something that white men as a whole don't have to deal with. Yeah, they deal with different things. And let me show you something. They don't deal with half the things when it comes to mental that black men deal with. And yet they find themselves doing meth and committing suicide. That tells you if they had to deal with everything black men dealt with, I think they would just implode. Because I see some of the things that they're killing themselves over, and I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? If you look at the suicide rate among whites, it is almost double of blacks. And then when you find out what they kill themselves over, you thinking, oh, you serious? You serious? When you see them going out and shooting up people, not just one person, they go and mass shoot up children, women and everybody, and then shoot themselves. Do you see people going around looking at a white man with, like, oh, he's about to mass shoot? Pay attention to that propaganda. How many mass shootings have we had concerning white men? So many, I've lost count. But yet a white man still can walk into the store with guns and ammunition and no one feels threatened. But some kind of way a black man walks in with a phone and because it's psychological. It's propaganda. Your mind has been wired to believe that the black man is a criminal element. And once the white man or white woman accuse you, It's their word to be true and yours to be, you have to prove it. All they have to do is say it so. Show you what I'm talking about. A white woman said, he took my purse. And if a white woman said, no, he didn't, she lied. Everybody said, oh, verification. It was authority. 5 black people said, no, he didn't. They still want to believe the white person. Subconsciously, you're saying the only true word is the word of a white person. They can go file charges on you. If a white person files it, it must have been true. You as a black person do it to white people, you're going to go through all kind of red tape to prove it. Same thing in Memphis. The black cops beat that guy up. We know it was wrong. Guess what? Instantly. Joker was fired and charged. But the white man, wait a minute, we need to see the videotape. I have to see the videotape. Well, we still need to shoot. Years. That's the life of being a black man in America. And the sad thing about being a black man in America is that the people that call you family and look like you are not you. And that's a hurtful thing. It's a hurtful thing to look over and see your family with the same color, but knowing they're not you. I think the saying, I could have this wrong, they say all kinfolk, all skinfolk ain't kinfolk. Wow. It kind of reminded me of a movie with John Wayne and Kirk Douglas. And Kirk Douglas was talking to the character who in the movie, it was in harm's way, that was playing the son of John Wayne, who was an officer. Both of them were officers. In fact, all 3 were officers. And he was trying to tell him about his dad. And he told Kirk Douglas, I'm sorry, but I can't take your assessment or something like that. And Kirk Douglas looked at him and said, well, I'm sorry. Well, I can't accept you as Rock's son. He said, I think somebody got in there before him. It was kind of messed up. Basically, he was saying that, man, you must be somebody else's son because you cannot be the son of Rock Tour. Wow. And so when you hear a lot of black men and women talking today, you walk around, you say, wow, you can't be black. You cannot have the experience. And when I say black, I'm talking about what society calls black. Because I don't think there's very few people, black, white, or whatever we want to call them, that are actually pure. But for the sake of it. But when you listen to people talk and the way they think about black men, it just makes you just a feeling of awe. Like, you don't see none of this stuff that goes on with other races. But yet, you still trust them. You still believe in them. You still go to work for them. And they have the money and the ability to do what they do in their businesses because they have support. They have support. You can try to open up a business as a black man and you will not get as much support as being a white man. And it's always this counter argument. That's not true. I'm a white man and this goes on with me. We're not talking about that it does not or if it does. We're talking about more times than not. More times than not. We're talking about likelihood. That's what we're talking about. How likely is it? Come on. And many of you live in denial, which denial is a self-defense mechanism. And I spoke about this, that many people today have created self-defense terms like race card, victim mindset, all these different words. Those are self-defense or just laughing. Something's wrong with him. See, laughter is a self-defense mechanism as well. And it's the one thing about it is that when you try to elevate, to escalate, those who subscribe to the natural order that the black man is beneath the white man will never see you right and don't want to see you right. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, I don't want to see you right, and I will not see you right. And anytime you address it, you're simply playing victim. That within itself is mental. And to show you how mental this stuff can be, is that I know some people in my family that are mental. And I realize that there's no need to be angry with them. Coming up in the black community in America, I never understood, or let me back up. I did not know the trauma that African Americans had endured. And living in America, especially in predominantly black areas where the poverty level is probably below the median level. So one of the things that I did not understand or didn't know was the level of trauma that had been inflicted upon the black race. That although inflicted hundreds of years ago, or even 100, it had been passed down from generation to generation. And the media, television, propaganda, and the words carried it on and kept it going. And here we are in 2023. This is why they said Barack Obama started racism. No, he didn't. He just basically challenged racism. He challenged the ideology of the Confederacy. I call it the Confederacy because those who created the Confederacy were white people who had this view all along, that we are supreme, we are pure. Those people are beneath us. And there are a lot of black people are content with that. They just like Stephen in the character Stephen. I see why I got to take this from this white man, but this nigga right here. See, it's a lot of black people like that. They say, I see why I got to take it from this white man. They have no problem with submitting and bowing and fetching. That's why, have you noticed when most whites who do not like Deion Sanders, and I'm using him as an example, as a case study, so to speak, they don't like him. And I want to say this. I don't agree with everything about Deion Sanders, to be frank about it. But I do agree that he has a right to be himself. Because they got a lot of people that are white that's being themselves. Case in point, Deion Sanders, the governor of Florida, a lot of bigots that out here running for office, doing all kind of stuff, and they okay with them. But that's another podcast. But let's go back to Deion Sanders. Have you noticed that when Deion Sanders is out and about and people try to, white people who are racist and bigots and try to deny it, when they talk about he's a clown, I don't like him, he's messing up this and that, he's a circus, why, they come back and say, I'm not racist. Why y'all don't say this? I love Freeman of Notre Dame. They bring up Freeman, or they'll bring up the other guy who's a Penn State. And I pretty much like the guy from Penn State, the black guy from Penn State, more than I like Freeman. But if you hear Freeman talk, it's almost like listening to Chris Brown. I saw Chris Brown walk up into a scene, and he walks in the scene, he goes, that's Chris Brown. And it's something about men who don't like another man to be masculine. That's something. Kind of reminds me of the lion. See, the lions don't have a problem with their brothers being around, but they're not going to allow another lion, now maybe, but very rare, are they going to allow another lion in their territory. And they're sure not going to keep the lions around them once they get to a certain age. You have to go get your own pride. And that's the same thing in America. White men, not all, I'm talking about those of the Confederates, have no problem with emasculated black men or black men that talk or act like they feel they should act. Like, hi there. It's okay because they feel like, oh, that's another woman. They don't feel threatened by him. And this is not to say the Notre Dame guy is effeminate, but if you hear him talking, it's almost like listening to, let me see somebody. I would say Officer Tatum, because Officer Tatum, he is masculine, but I would say brainwashed, but he's masculine, so that's not a good example. I'm trying to think of somebody. Let's say, see, the guy from Notre Dame is a in-between of effeminate and masculine. He's just right there, almost like metrosexual. And they don't feel threatened by him. They feel you're good. You're in your place. You know, it's like stay in your place. See, that's the good word for it. See, people don't have a problem with a black man that knows his place. That's the natural order. It's not a law. There's no constitution. It's just you just need to know what's understood need not be stated. And that's the life of being a black man in America, because you know this, but if you try to say this, they're quick to come back with, there you go, excuses, race card, victim mindset. And they come back with the black on black crime. Like Chicago is the only city in America. But there's no proof that one race is more criminal to one another. But there is proof that black people are the minority. There is proof that black people are more oppressed than whites in America. They are more targeted than whites in America, because it's like being in the school. The bully picks on the person that gives the least amount of effort or the ability to resist. Authorities are not trying to oppress white people. We know what happens when that happens. I mean, when you do that, what happens? They march up to the Capitol, because they are the majority. They are the police. This is why you see them saying, we got your six, because they are the police. Isn't that what Bull Connor said? D the law. I don't use profanity, but that's what he used, profanity. D the law. We are the law. That's true. White people in America are the law. They make the law. And if they want to change the law, they do so, because they are the majority. Oh, they the police. They the DA. They the grand jury. What you mean indict? I'm the police. I tell you what to do. Come on now. You take a town of 30,000 that has 50 police. You think 50 police can control 30,000 people? Nope. So who is the police? The 30,000 people. Because at any time that 30,000 don't want the police to be the police no more, they're not the police. Who you think is the judge? That 30,000 people. See, that's what people have to understand in America. The law is with the majority. See, the Bible said the law is for the lawless, but who is the majority when it comes to the Bible? God. And that's why white people in America say we are God. That's why they will burn crosses on the churches, to let you know your God can't stop us. We'll burn the cross on the church where you pray, to let you know we don't fear God. Isn't that what the Bible talks about the judge, the unjust judge, who feared not man nor God? Whoa. And we have to understand what type of judge was this. This is the New Testament. Had to be the Roman Empire. And that's where we are today. Most of the things in America are built off the Roman Empire, the Greeks. They say that they, in God we trust. What God they talking about? I want you to know it wasn't the God Yahweh. There's another God. The Bible says Satan is the God of this world. Many people don't understand that the people in America, and this is not all of America, when they talking about in God we trust, they talking about Satan. They discussing Satan. This is why they can have no remorse for the things they do. This is why they can shoot people and kill people and look over them with no remorse, like I got him. and just look over a body like it's a deer or something. I got him. Killed him. Over a stop sign or something. He didn't comply. I shot him. Got him. Yes. Got my first body, y'all. Yes. Like a demon or something. It kind of made me think about, because I'm a history lover, thought about Russia, how they call the Germans devils. And the thing about that, we talk about the Jews, a lot of those Jews helped the Germans. They did. They helped the Germans. Just like a lot of black people today help whites. Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Tyler Perry. Look at Tyler Perry. He's most of the sodomites, let me say it that way. Sodomites and perversion, lasciviousness comes from the white culture, the European culture. Not all, that's where it mostly comes from. But guess what? They use certain black people to propagate or to promote as if it's not them. Tyler Perry does that. Tyler Perry gets up with all of this. This is why whenever many white people talk about gays and all this, they promote it as if it's a black thing. But most perverts and sodomites are white. But they're promoting it that it's a black thing. No, that's a white thing, because most of you are pedophiles. Most of you like to rape people, children, and rape women. That's a proven fact. And you've traumatized so many people. Traumatized. But guess what? When you see a white man, you're not clutching your kids. But when they see a black man, they hold on their kids like we're the pedophiles. But the numbers are with them. See how they project what's in their culture onto ours, always using us as the scapegoat and promoting themselves as the saints and the lovers of God, the lovers of family. Yeah, destroying other people's families. I like to say pissing in other people's bed, keeping theirs crystal clean. And then if you need somewhere to sleep, well, if it's so bad over here, go back to your own bed that I just pissed in. Wow. Okay. Got you. And to talk like this, again, he's militant. He's a fake minister. Fake. He's not real. Who is real? All the real pastors are the ones who speak like them. It goes to show you about Jesus Christ. See, Jesus Christ was a man of color. No, I'm not a Hebrew Israelite. Don't agree with everything they say. They may have some truth. I'm not a Hebrew Israelite, so don't go there. But Jesus Christ was a man of color. It goes to show why they thought he was a lunatic. Felt like he was crazy. But who killed Jesus Christ? The Romans? Now, the Jews offered him up to the Romans, but they wasn't the one that actually did the death sentence. It was the Romans that killed him. They just gave him up. This is the same thing with Charleston White. Charleston White, everybody talking about getting Charleston White. Who has Charleston White shot? They can't wait to get their hands on Charleston White. But how many of them trying to put their hands on a white cop that had shot their son or brother and everything? He walk around, they won't touch him because they know, like in the movie Training Day, he said they know if they get out of line, I'm going to tax that. Black people in America talk all this nonsense. And what I mean by that, you are allowed. This is what Training Day. When you look at movies, they say a lot. Denzel Washington character said, Roger sold dope to kids. That's what he said in one of the lines. He said, I allowed Roger to operate with immunity. He said, but now it's time to pay the piper. Boy, that sounds like Satan, don't it? Satan will give you power. He will allow you to operate. Satan allows, through whites in America, to sell dope and to do all this rap nonsense. But for so long. And then he said, now it's time to pay the piper. Notice most of the rap people that make all this money, they don't live past 30 unless they really good, which is like Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, a few others. Some kind of way they avoided death. They must be really at the top. Whew. But the rest of them, they had to pay the piper. And most white people say is this: I allow them to do this as long as you killing each other. But if you step out of line, if you come up out the jungle, if you come out the safari, I'm gonna tax that tail. So they promote you as the most dangerous people. Ooh, black people are so dangerous. Black men are some threat to society. But I want to ask you this: when have a group of black men ran up on the White House? When has a group of black men in the thousands invaded the Capitol? When when have black men declared themselves a nation and committed treason and started a civil war? All of those who did that were white men, but yet they are still declared as or deemed as peaceful, loving, God-fearing white men. And black men are America's most wanted. Make it make sense. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. But it is. And this podcast is going to be deemed as militant. Hating whitey. Hating this country. Hate this loving God. Hates government. Okay. And that's not true. Anytime you defy a certain type of authority, which is the authority of Satan, it's always deemed as something is wrong with you. Something wrong. You're not a man of God. That's why let me back up. The reason they say things like this is because they have a certain view of how they think how black men should, or black ministers should preach. You should preach, God is love. Turn the other cheek. No matter what they say, that's what they want you to believe. They want to be able to spit on you, slap you, sick dogs on you, drag you down the street, call you nigga, do whatever, and you just say, the love of God. Whenever I want a pinata to beat, I find me a nigga, so to speak. Even though I don't use the word nigga, that's what they say. Niggas are our pinata whenever we want to hit. Niggas are our scapegoat. We got a goat, we just take a bunch of bow and arrows and throw them in them. And that's what the scapegoat was all about in biblical time. Is that there was a catch a goat, and all of the things that they did, they would place it on this goat, and when he ran out the city, all their sins or their problems or whatever was to leave the cities. It was symbolic. Okay? This is what they do to black men. All the things they do, they just find a black man and put it on him. And this is why they're so quick to label a black man as a con artist. Because when you label somebody as a con artist, you don't have to prove that they did something wrong. You don't have to prove what you're saying to be true, because he's a con artist. He conned me. And whenever you see whites doing stuff like this, I want you to understand they've been doing that for years. They say that about black people. Well, if he got that many, he must have been getting away with a lot. Well, if you're doing that many, if you are accusing that many people, how many other people have you accused? How long have you been doing stuff like that yourself and getting away with it for years, for centuries, decades? Your ancestors doing it and on and on. And you learn from your family how to accuse men of things and women. I remember at one point they had it where they were arresting people for renting cars, and they come back a day later or something. They got the car back and still was putting charges on them and stuff. And it was predominantly for black people. Come on. Stuff like that. Well, I want to say this as I get ready to wrap this up. People can say a lot of things and can deny a lot of things. And we can all give our opinions. and we can all pretend. But it's one thing about it, is they say the proof is in the pudding. When you look around the United States of America and you sit down with the average black man and ask him about his life in America, and I'm talking about those who are highly affected, then you are going to find the results. Just sit down and talk to. The problem is that we don't like to talk to people who are affected the most. We want to talk to other people and say, what you got to say don't matter. If you want to know about how women feel, talk to women. If you want to know how white men feel, talk to white men. If you want to know how black men feel, talk to black men. But don't go talking to white men to tell me about black men. How are you going to tell me how I feel? That's what's wrong within America. We want to ask other people how other people feel instead of asking the very person who we want to know about how they feel. When you do that, then you're going to start walking closer and closer to the problem. I hope you continue to follow me here on ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast. We're all about community impact over profit. We're not anti-government, anti-police, anti-USA. We love the USA. I love the USA. I want the USA to get better. I know that this world will end one day, but it is my hope that the remnant that are here can be the best they can be while you are here. And so have a great day. Continue to support us. Go over, like, share, and subscribe over onto our YouTube channel, and follow us here on Facebook, ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast. And we thank you and look forward to you every Tuesday, ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast. And let's say this, we thank God for every race, white, black, Native American, Asian, whatever you may subscribe to. Because this podcast is not about one person does something wrong. This is about addressing things within the black community and within the community, period. All about community impact over profit. All about unity. God bless the United States. This is not the Confederates. It's one nation, one flag under God. Not under gods with an S. Not flags with an S. Unless you're talking about the state flag. Speaking of the state flag. So it's the United States of America, not the Confederate States of America. This is in God we trust, Yah, not Satan. Have a great day. Tune in next Tuesday.